On KGW News, nightmare neighbors.
Explosions and theft and screaming.
Longtime residents fed up and worried about the house next door.
I'm really looking to get out of here.
How squatters have taken over and why there's no end in sight. Plus, robbed on the job. What happened after a PGE worker was held up at gunpoint. And the struggle to staff hospitals pits nurses against administrators.
RN vacancies have gone up 36% in the last 5 years.
We have the nurses. They just don't want to work in the environment.
The solution proposed in Salem tonight that could impact your access to care.
This is KGW News at 11.
Well, good evening, and we begin once again with another dusting of snow, with some spots getting several fresh inches over the course of the day. Here's what it looked tonight in Tigard on top of Bull Mountain as we settle in for yet another chilly night. Let's get right to meteorologist Joe Ranieri. So, Joe, I take it the snow is over for now. The question, for how long?
Well, we won't see it in the forecast at all tomorrow. We will see it, though, later on in the week. I'll talk about that in just a couple of minutes, but I want to focus on the cold temperatures that we're going to be seeing overnight. As we look at the satellite and radar, we're done with the precipitation. Of course, in many locations, it looked pretty throughout the day, but right now we are seeing dry weather up and down the I-5 corridor. A few snow showers kind of lingering over the mountain passes, but you're not going to be seeing any new snow out there heading into your overnight hours. But here's a look at the cold air that's going to be arriving. So I have this stopped here at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning up and down the I-5 corridor and throughout much of the metro area. We are going to be under a hard freeze. So along with the cold temperatures, we'll be seeing some icy conditions in many locations. So if you can give yourself a little extra time heading out tomorrow, that's going to be a good idea. And heading into the afternoon, we're looking at temperatures right around the low 40s with a little bit more of that sunshine. Temperatures currently, David, are right around the low 30s throughout parts of King City, Hillsborough, where they're going to be dropping another 5-6 degrees in a few locations. And coming up in my detailed forecast about 10 minutes from now, I'll talk more about the chance to see another round of snow.
At least we get a break from the snow. Thanks, Joe. Speaking of the cold, though, we have a second suspected death from hypothermia to report tonight. We understand this person died today in Portland, though no other details are being released right now. Multnomah County's medical examiner will investigate to confirm the cause of death, though it could take weeks or months to know that officially. Oregon leaders are grappling tonight with how to solve a staffing shortage in healthcare. Part of the fallout from that, nurses and others are now pushing for a bill that would place strict limits on their workloads. Alma McCarty's in the newsroom tonight. And Alma, it seems workers and administrators actually agree here. Nurses are often overworked and burned out.
Yeah, David, both sides acknowledge there is a staffing crisis within the healthcare system. What they disagree on is how to address it. Supporters of this bill believe that it will hold hospitals accountable, requiring them to adhere to staffing ratios. Opponents say it won't solve a workforce shortage, and it will threaten patients' access to care.
Ahead of 2 days of testimony in Salem, Representative Rob Noce began by saying this.
I know that this is a very big deal. This is probably one of the most important topics that we're going to wrestle with.
The topic in question, hospital staffing. The bill on the table would mandate nurse-to-patient ratios. The proposed legislation would ensure staffing levels were sufficient to allow workers to take meal and rest breaks. The ratios would vary by type of care and department. Hospitals could be fined or sued for not meeting those standards. Nurses argued it's not a matter of money. It's the unrelenting demands of the job.
We do not have a shortage of nurses. We have a shortage of nurses willing to work at the bedside in the current conditions.
Could you imagine what it feels like to be proficient and competent at a job you love, yet not have the ability to do your best because you're continually being pushed to do more and more by your employer?
You're pushing these people past their breaking point, and that should worry you.
Some said despite their dedication and years of work, they've left the bedside for good.
I felt exhausted, demoralized, worthless, gaslighted, then numb, apathetic, and suicidal. The most traumatic shifts that triggered my burnout were when we were understaffed. I developed overwhelming anxiety trying to juggle unsafe staff loads, safe medication administration, and trying to care for everyone at once with the care that they really needed.
Amid the passionate support for this legislation, chief nursing officers and other opponents from across the state said this bill is not the solution. President and CEO of the Oregon Association of Hospitals and Health Systems called it a dangerous experiment at the worst possible time.
The nurse staffing law needs to be modernized. It needs to work for today's environment. I am confident that together we can work to address these challenges. But this bill does not do those things.
We already aim to have the same standards that are being recommended. It's not from lack of trying.
And patients and their loved ones are going to lose if this bill passes.
All right, that's interesting, Alma. What exactly do hospitals mean when they say patients could lose out here?
Well, David, hospital admins are concerned. They might have to limit beds or reduce services if they can't hire enough staff to meet the ratios laid out in the bill. Lawmakers have about a month to work on it and move it out of committee. We'll continue to follow the developments here, and we'll have the full text of the bill linked on KGW.com.
Thank you, Alma. Meanwhile, in our homeless crisis tonight, Oregon Governor Tina Kotek gave her first legislative testimony since taking office and urged state lawmakers to pass a $155 million package. Now, this is something we've been following closely. The House bill would fund things like expanding shelter space, rehousing people who are homeless, and developing a long-term rental assistance program. Here is some of what the governor said.
We're here today because the human suffering caused by the housing crisis is one of the most daunting emergencies we have ever faced in our beautiful state. Business as usual is simply not enough. We must work together across all levels of government and across party lines to make the immediate and long-term changes that this humanitarian crisis requires.
Kotek's proposal also calls for $33 million statewide to go toward preventing homelessness. And when it comes to challenges around stable and affordable housing, tonight we have a story about a group of squatters who've taken over a house in southeast Portland, with neighbors saying it's gotten so bad it now feels like a war zone. Blair Best went to check it out.
It's the piercing sound of a neighborhood on the defense. Workers remove damaged fence posts. Jacob Adams' latest attempt to block his family from the house next door.
It's been horrible.
He lives next to one of the many abandoned homes in southeast Portland, overrun by squatters.
Explosions and theft and screaming and pounding at 3 o'clock in the morning on the roof.
So we are going to approach this house right now. It seems a little alarming just by the looks of it. There's a lot of graffiti and X's on the doors. You can clearly see that there's been a pretty big fire, so here we go.
This video shows a fire in mid-February at the property, spreading to Adams' fence and tree.
While I'm putting the fire out, my wife is hysterical, and propane tanks are igniting off within feet from my face.
He says it felt like a war zone.
And I'm thinking, is this going to be, am I going to, save my wife and my house and then I'm not going to be around or, critically injured?
All right, so we're in the backyard now and we're watching our step because there's lots of needles and empty tequila bottles here in the yard. Now we're told that no one is here right now. We've tried checking on the tent. No one's been home, but we're told that they come back at night. Now, if you look this way, this is the damage from the most recent fire. Neighbors tell us this isn't the first time that this home has caught on fire. This is actually the fourth. Another thing they shared with us is that they often smell secondhand fentanyl smoke wafting over their fence.
The Portland police have been amazing, which has been really, really nice. But they can enforce laws when the homeowner doesn't trespass the people that are living there.
When it comes to squatters, police can only act if they can prove there's criminal trespassing, which has to come from the homeowner.
What's the response been like from the homeowner?
Practically nothing. As far as I'm concerned, he's irresponsible. He didn't want to do anything with it.
We talked on the phone with a person who represents the owner of this building. He tells us that the plan is to demolish the building and that they understand how difficult this has been for the neighbors. They tell us they're not sure yet if they're going to rebuild, given how hard the situation is for everyone involved.
I'm really looking to get out of here. I graduated from David Douglas High School in '57. This is my neighborhood, but I just can't put up with this anymore.
In Southeast Portland, Blair Best, KGW News.
You got a feel for those neighbors there. We have an update tonight on a mass overdose at a McMinnville home and a man facing federal charges after police say he sold cocaine laced with fentanyl, which killed one person and sent 6 others to the hospital. Now, if convicted, 28-year-old John Kyle Donahue could face 20 years or more in prison. According to court documents, he sold cocaine to the victims on the morning of February 10th, but warned them it could contain fentanyl. Now, records show one of the victims used a home test kit, which found some of the drugs were negative for fentanyl. One victim even said that they knew immediately after taking the drug that something was wrong. Documents say the suspect drove 3 of those victims to the hospital. You're watching